So it has happened, probably the least surprising thing this weekend. Wolves have sacked Vitor Pereira, a decision which I think, on the balance of things, is obviously the right one and inevitable, really, after our 3-0 defeat to Fulham last time out. It's a decision and something that, the writing's been on the wall, really, for the past, I'd say, month, 2 months, especially after the start of the season that we've had and the questions around the recruitment. I spoke about this on my latest episode of What We Learned a few days ago, but, you know, I think that this is the right decision. Possibly could have been made earlier. I'm glad they've taken action now, at least. But for me, it's been a really damaging appointment. And after my Burnley game, and I still back this up, I think it's one of the most damaging appointments under Fosun. You could argue it is the most damaging because no other manager has had the level of control that Fosun have given Vitor Pereira this summer. I think a lot of the blame does lie with the ownership, but Vitor Pereira has been part of the problem this season, and there's no real way to get around that. I know as fans we don't always want to blame managers, and it's unfortunate to see someone lose their job. You never want to wish someone out of a job, and especially a manager who really connected with the fans last year. It's really sad, to be honest, to see that it's ended this way. But the misuse of players, the poor in-game management, the poor man management, the really confusing substitutions, and the decision to drop Andre and Joao Gomez both yesterday, really backfiring on Pereira. Very obviously, there's been dressing room and background discomfort and displeasure at the start Wolves have made. And I think it's only natural that Fosun have come to the decision that, it couldn't continue any further. Obviously, I want to wish Vitor the best. He's obviously tried his best. It hasn't worked. I think the key blame here lies with Fosun and Jeff Shee, giving him the keys to the recruitment, his own director of football, and a 3-year deal just over a month ago. I think the decision now to sack him is a damning indictment on the lack of structure, the lack of a philosophy, and the lack of a clear plan by those in charge of Wolves at the moment. And whether a new manager can come in and galvanise this team is yet to be seen. Obviously, as fans, we all hope so. But under this current ownership, this cycle will continue because we've constantly been told, especially this summer, that the owners had learnt from their mistakes. And it's very clear that they haven't. We have, again, given a manager a new deal and sacked him within a month. We have backed him and not properly backed him at the same time. We've given him his director of football and a plethora of signings, but have Fosun really gone all out to try and stop this team from getting relegated and even trying to push up the table? No, they haven't. This has been a very controlled decline of what was once a fantastic team. And it's happened to plenty of clubs before. It's happened to Southampton. It's happened to Leicester. It'll happen to other clubs in the future. It's happening to us. But the footballing decisions, time and time again, by Jeff Shee have been so poor. Even rumours already of Gary O'Neill being on the shortlist of replacements, who did a pretty similar job with a better squad, I should say. So it just sort of goes to show that I don't think there's really a clear plan in place. And unfortunately, despite Pereira getting the sack and this hopefully being a corner for Wolves to turn, the onus, unfortunately, is on Jeff Shee and the recruitment team to make a decision. And he hasn't shown since Nuno that Fosun are able to either get the manager right or back the right manager. So I think it's the right decision overall. There's still a lot of question marks about this squad and very big question marks about this ownership. I've always been very clear that I don't think that they're the right custodians. They'll never take us into administration or anything like that. They are financially frugal, but the lack of ambition and the lack of a clear plan and philosophy is a real concern. And the club has sort of lost its identity. So hopefully whoever comes in next can sort this team out and get some results for now and just bring a little bit of positivity back into this club. But the key concern, obviously, is that this cycle continues next season if we do stay up. So clear changes have to be made. This has to be the wake-up call. If Gary O'Neill wasn't and this isn't, I don't think the owners are ever going to wake up. So, yeah, right decision overall. But, still huge question marks about who comes in. and whether Wolves can stay in the Premier League this season. But for now, hopefully we can get some positivity with some tough fixtures coming up. And yeah, we'll just keep plodding along and the fans will be there every step of the way, I'm sure.
So it's finally done. I thought it was going to be done last week, or the week before even, but thankfully now it's finally, war is over. But make no mistake, I don't think anything will change no matter who we get in as manager. I think sadly we are only going one direction. No, not him. But the problem for me lies, obviously, and everyone else will say the same thing, is with the board. Jeff Shee, Fosun, just asset stripping the club for the last few years and then not replacing with quality. The window that we had, that Jeff called a good window, has been probably one of the worst windows that we've actually had in recent memory with the players that we've brought in. And don't get me wrong, I'm not as downcast as the rest of the fan base is on the talent that we have in the squad. I think our starting 11 has shown in games this season, Brighton at home, Spurs away, that we can compete at a high level with the talent in this squad, and that is the heartbeat of that team is João Gomez and Andre. And dropping both of those and losing 3-0 yesterday was an absolute crime, because they are two of the best players in the squad. And playing a physical brand of football without being physical, without any sort of talent around the ball. Like Menetzi doesn't really offer a whole lot. Arias isn't really offering a lot. I know he's meant to be talented and maybe he will come into his own a little bit more if we play a proper system with proper wingers. But some of the signings, besides Krejci, with the new Domenico Tetti, like style of recruitment, he's worked with Vitor Pereira before and they kind of thought that they could make the club their own. It just hasn't really worked in entirety, and all the news that's coming out now about Vitor turning down some Premier League proven players like Kyle Walker-Peters, Harry Wilson, who scored yesterday. Yeah, for me, he had to go. And now he's saying that he regrets not quitting in the summer as well. And I'm like, brother, you came in, overhauled the club yourself. You brought in a man to come and help you do recruitment. You recruited your players that you wanted to sign, turned down actual Premier League proven players. Like, what do you mean? Like, it's like eating the dinner. Like, brother, you cooked the dish. Like, you ate your dinner and said that it sucked, but you cooked. You are the one, you're the chef. So I'm not really sure what the fuck he's on about, if I'm being entirely honest with you. I'm glad that he's gone, but make no mistake, it's not the root of the problem still, because this club's only going one direction with Fosun and Jeff Shee in charge, no matter who we get in. And I would love, look, a Premier League proven manager like Brendan Rodgers. And I'd also like to take a risk on someone like Gareth Southgate. Shoot me, you know? I want Gareth Southgate. I'm moved by that. I'm also moved by pretty much anyone who gets into the club, and because I'm a sucker. I'll get into the club, we'll appoint a new manager, we'll win one game, and I'll say that we're going to stay up. So it doesn't really matter who we appoint, in my opinion, because I'm going to back the manager unless they're absolutely wank. I just don't want someone like Vitor, who has been at 18 clubs for a year, and then surprised when in a year's time, after maybe it works out for 6 months, that it's cooked again. Like, let's just, you know what, fuck it. Let's go and get, I don't know why I have scissors. Let's go and get someone like young, like Hertzler or Areola? Nipple? No. Iriola. Or, you know, someone that's trying to build their brand in the sport, you know? Someone that's trying to build like a new style of football or be revolutionary, and just let them cook. Because even if we go down, and we probably will go down, at least we had someone confident that wanted to come in and prove themselves, you know? I'm wondering if we go and get a manager that's not gonna, like, is already Premier League proven and like has a track record of staying up, what do they have to prove? I'm just waffling at this point. I'm happy Vitor Pereira is gone, but I just don't see anything changing, unfortunately. I've kind of clocked out a little bit, kind of checked out a little bit. But maybe I can be back on board if we get a cool manager in and then he says all the right things in the press conference. I'm a sucker, aren't I? Like, I'm probably just going to renew again next season no matter what happens. So I say this and fuck Fosun, fuck Jeff Shee, and then I'll just go and fucking buy the new kit at the end of the season and renew my season ticket anyway. So what can I do?
So Vitor Pereira has now officially left Wolves, and you feel really the writing was already on the wall for this one. I think after our loss at home to Burnley, losing it the way we did, I really think his clashes with fans at full time, that should have been the end of his tenure. But Jeff Shee, we know what he's like, and he was never going to pull the plug that early. I'm glad he has now removed him from his position after the loss to Fulham. But I really just feel like the team selection recently it almost seemed like he wanted to be relieved of his duties. And I was quite disappointed in regards to that. While I'm grateful to him for last season, as I'm sure many of us are, I really feel like he wasn't the man to save us from the situation we find ourselves in. And while he has a lot of issues with not being backed by the board, I do feel like a lot of this is his own doing. But when it comes to managers I'd like to see take the job, I think Brendan Rodgers is quite a realistic candidate. He's the bookmaker's favourite at the moment, or was this morning when the news was announced. And he's someone we've been linked with before, and I could see him as he has Premier League experience. Sergio Conceição's another name mentioned, Portuguese obviously, and we love to do that. But I'm not too sure he'd want to come to us despite him being previously the second favourite. I could see us going for someone like a Michael Carrick. Obviously, it didn't work out for him at Middlesbrough, but I feel like he's a very talented manager. And while the Premier League might be too big a step up from him, I could easily see Fosun going for someone who they feel, even in the event of a relegation, could build towards something next year in the Championship. And that's kind of part of the reason I see us going back for Gary O'Neill, unfortunately, as it would be the most Jeff Shee decision ever. But again, I don't think it's one that any of us fans would be happy with at all.
Well, Vitor Pereira has been sacked this morning, and I don't think anyone is going to be surprised, to be honest. This season has been pretty atrocious. No wins in 10 games, no Premier League wins since April. And when you do that as a Premier League club, you're going to be in trouble. And I think this season, he just seems like he's run out of ideas tactically. Tactically, we look inept. I'm not entirely sure what we're trying to do each game. Every team in the Premier League has that kind of ideology, but this season, it doesn't seem like Pereira did. And he just ran out of ideas, looking for solutions that weren't there. I mean, yesterday, he dropped Angel Gomez, and it just didn't work. It felt like he was gambling every time he put a lineup out, hoping that it would work. And it hasn't. Simple as that. And we're 8 points adrift, 10 games into the season. There's obviously deeper issues at the club, as we all know. The blame is, got to go at the owners as well, because again, in the last few seasons, we find ourselves in the same position. Where we're chasing our own tail, looking for a new manager 10, 12 games into the season. I mean, we apparently heard that Pereira's sources come out and said that he could have left at the start of the season, but he didn't. I mean, he wants to stay in the Premier League. I don't think that's going to happen, but again, we're in the same position. It's the same cycle, which the owners were trying to avoid by giving him a new contract, and we've ended up sacking him anyway. It's just poor, as simple as that. And we're looking for a new manager to hopefully keep us up. But whoever comes in, I think it's got to accept that we potentially could be a Championship team next season. So that's obviously, it's got to be a long-term project. Whoever comes in, it's got to be a long-term process. Whether we stay up or go down, I think the manager, whoever comes in, has got to realise that it's a massive task to keep us up this season. We do have enough quality, but it's a long trip, long day. It's a long day for whoever comes in. I've got to be honest. But I mean, for me personally, Kurt, there's a couple of options. Obviously, it seems like Rodgers is the odds-on favourite. at the moment. That could change. I mean, you see it, Bruno Lage potentially coming back in. I mean, for me personally, you got to look at Ole and Abel Ferreira, Carlos Carvajal as well. I think Ralph Hasenhüttl as well could be a good shout if you're looking for someone that has experience in the Championship as well. So there's a few out there. I mean, the Bolo Glimt manager as well is always linked to a Premier League team, but I don't think it'll come to Wolves. Potentially Thiago Motta as well. I would love Thiago Motta, but again, it's where we are in the league. Are we a tractable proposition? I'm not too sure. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who comes in. They've got a big task, but yeah, hopefully we stay up. But yeah, as always, up the Wolves, and thank you for having me on.
So it's the day after another dismal defeat for Wolves, this time at the hands of Fulham, and this one has cost Vitor his job. I think inevitable is the word that springs to mind here, and delayed, ultimately. I think my mind was made up after Sunderland, and it was amplified after Burnley, not just because of the shocking result and performance, but obviously the ugly scenes following that game. And speaking of ugly scenes, yesterday, that was one of my least pleasant experiences, going to watch Wolves. You know, I've been going my whole life, 14 out of 19 years I've been here, I've been going to Wolves, and that was one of my least favourite experiences watching the club, and that can be said about a few games this year. I've never felt so disconnected from this football club, and Pereira wasn't fully to blame for that. While he played a big factor, I think his team selections this year have been poor. Clearly didn't know his best 11, as well as his substitutions have been poor, the timing of which have been cost us games. You know, seeing Kiana Hoover introduced at Sunderland sticks out as one. Of course, yesterday being a big one with Andre and Gomez on the bench. You know, a ludicrous decision if you ask me. The two players that add a bit of quality to our team. But ultimately Pereira wasn't fully to blame, like I mentioned earlier. I think we have to remember that the board has still left him with bare scraps this year. The sale of Mateus Cunha, you know, being replaced with John Arias, who is a subpar replacement at best in comparison. Nelson Semedo, look who we've brought in to replace him. They are not as good. Ryan Aït-Nouri, whilst I'm a big fan of Hugo Bueno, David Mollewolf shown a bit of quality against Chelsea. They're not Ryan Aït-Nouri. And even look at our bench. Last year we could introduce the likes of Pablo Sarabia, Gonzalo Guedes. This year, who have we got on that bench who's going to change the game? We've got no one. And that's ultimately what's going to cost us in bringing in a manager as well, I feel. A manager is going to look at this squad, if they've got any reputation, anything to keep a hold of, and go, I don't fancy that challenge, is what I feel will happen. Despite being a Premier League club, whoever comes in has got to be prepared to almost go down. Because it's going to be a big task to keep us in this division with the quality we've got on the pitch, no matter who comes in. But some of the names, wow. Just as I've pressed record on this, I've seen that Gary O'Neill is a consideration for a return. And wow, I mean, it's almost comical. You know, you'd see that as a joke post, you know, a troll on Twitter, but that's coming out from Alex Cook, a decent journalist. You know, other names in the hat. We're seeing favourite for the job, Brendan Rodgers, and whilst Brendan is a solid manager, has obviously done well with Leicester in the league before, has had trouble behind the scenes at Celtic, has had trouble behind the scenes elsewhere, and is that really what is going to work with Fosun, with this regime? I don't know. Other names up there, Eric Ten Hag, who I don't think comes. Sergio Conceição, who's just signed a big deal in Saudi, so I don't think he comes. So it's really, I'm at a loss as to where we actually go from here. Whilst I wanted Vitor out, you know, it's not an easy decision of who to bring in, who would fancy coming in. So ultimately, I think James Collins is taking the training for the foreseeable future, similar to how Steve Davis did once we sacked Bruno Lage, obviously before we brought in Yul Lopetegui. So we have to see what comes of that, I think. But I think there's just a big spelling of doom over this season now. I think whoever comes in is going to really struggle with this team. And I think unless something big changes, and that means the board rather than the manager, going to be the same old, despite players' departure. But hopefully I can come back to this and I'm wrong, but we'll see, I suppose. And the rest of the season still lies ahead.
Well, that's it for Vitor Pereira, and I'll be honest, it's probably a little bit too late. Given how poor things have been this year, I think this should have happened at the very latest after the Burnley match. That was an inexcusable defeat and should have been the end of it, but they wanted to, just see what he had left, and I understand that. Going forward, I mean, I think that last season when he replaced Gary O'Neill, we would have taken anyone. So the immediate success, the points and the pints, all that stuff, that was well received because Gary seemed like kind of a stiff, and here's Vitor, this new appointed guy who's got a personality and held the players accountable, and just the vibes were good. But I think the very harsh reality here is that you don't win matches on vibes, right? And in the off season, it proved to be true that while Vitor was good at motivating players that currently had talent, he is well out of his depth when it comes to developing players. Everybody who did well under him last year either stayed the same or got worse, right? Jurgen Strand-Larsen has been awful this year under him after looking great last year. All the new guys that were brought in, Arias, Krejci, whatnot, they've had some flashes, but have shown some true inconsistencies. And Agbadu even was our signing of the year in the winter last year. When I look back at Vitor's tenure, I think he would have been a great stopgap to stop us from being relegated last year, which he did. But I don't know. I mean, the contract at the beginning of the year was baffling. He didn't prove enough to return that, in my opinion. And now we're stuck. We're in a similar position where we don't really have, I feel like a rudder to keep us afloat. I would be absolutely stunned if we don't go down this year. So if that's the case, let's get somebody who's at least familiar with the championship. I would not hate. Michael Carrick would be my top choice. For sure, I think. Edwards would be fine. I don't know. He just signed with Middlesbrough, so I'm not sure he's going to want to leave just yet, given that he's likely going to be playing in the same division as us next year anyway. All in all, I wish things would have went down differently, but this is a signing that Wolves have to get right, or else we're going to be in trouble for not just next year, but for many years to come.